The story about Putin's advisor Dmitriev traveling to the United States and in general about his statements is very strange. And this story, in my personal opinion, proves that there is not just a lack of coordination, but an actual conflict between Putin's administration and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Moreover, this is not the first time this conflict has come up. I've even come across such insider information on Russian Z channels close to Putin's administration, suggesting that Lavrov might be removed from his duties. He has overstayed his welcome, is being overly and perhaps excessively cautious, and makes statements that are not quite flexible enough to be easily understood by the officials at the US State Department. And that is probably the main reason why it was Dmitriev and not Lavrov who was sent to Washington. It's an attempt by Putin's administration, by Putin himself, to engage in a kind of diplomatic balancing act in order to clarify and present a more flexible position regarding the meeting with Trump, which either is being canceled or isn't. It's unclear what's going on. Because what we're seeing now is that Donald Trump absolutely does not want to meet with Putin at this point, since these endless talks and games have already worn everyone out. Let's go through this step by step. Dmitriev, the so-called tunnel man, as he's called on social media, simply proposed building a tunnel between Russia and the United States somewhere around Alaska to connect Anchorage with the territory of the Russian Federation. That's a story of its own. Whatever he's smoking, that's another matter. But then he came to the United States, appeared on some pretty popular TV channels among Republicans and Trump supporters, Fox News in particular, and made a statement. What did he say? He said that there are absolutely no problems at all regarding the signing of a peace agreement on Ukraine. 3 reasons. He just came out and said 3 reasons. First, there's one reason there. Security guarantees for Ukraine. Russia is open and ready to offer any security guarantees for Ukraine. That's not even an issue. This can be resolved in 2 minutes. Second, well, of course, the territories. Well, when it comes to the territories, we have to discuss something. We want to get Donbas, the entire Zaporizhzhia region and Kherson region. This needs to be resolved, and we think that some options can even be found here. And third, it's Ukraine's neutrality. That is, Ukraine should not join a military alliance like NATO, and this will already be perceived as a guarantee for the Russian Federation. Friends, that's it. That's all. So, statements and observations about some of the root causes of the ongoing crisis, Dmitriev is already adjusting them as of today. And what he was talking about last Friday, here it is. That's all. A person arrived a tunnel? No, a jelly person. Like this, or a jelly-like person. And this person explained how things should be seen there and mentioned the key surname Vitkov. I want to meet with Vitkov because Vitkov, who didn't take any notes and showed up without a stenographer, appeared back at the beginning of August in the Russian Federation, somewhere in the Kremlin. He is now Putin's trump card, Dmitriev's trump card, the Kremlin's trump card. That there was some kind of agreement with Vitkov to return to this agreement. That's all. 3 main points, we resolve everything and everything is fine. Further, it was clear to the Trump administration that this representative of Putin, although present at the discussions, might not have possessed the complete authority required to set or negotiate new terms for any future agreements between the 2 nations. Due to this uncertainty regarding his official capacity and the extent of his mandate, he was accused of possibly acting beyond his authorized role. Moreover, he was accused by Mr. Besson himself, the Minister of Finance, through whom the entire sanctions track against Moscow is currently being handled, of being nothing more than a propagandist. And when listening to this person, you really need to take what he says with a grain of salt, divide it by 2, 3, or even 5. And why did this happen? Dmitriev was caught in blatant lies on another TV channel, this time on the American state channel CNN. This concerns strikes on civilian infrastructure, and specifically on kindergartens. The United States accused the Russian Federation of striking not military targets, but civilian ones, including kindergartens. And here was Dmitriev's reaction. What do you expect from a propagandist?
I was in Ukraine after the war started, and these are not just military targets. I saw buildings that had been destroyed. Earlier this week, a child in Kharkiv was killed. I mean, it's not like Russia is only targeting military targets. There are civilian targets all over Ukraine that are being targeted.
Well, of course, Russia does not target kindergartens, and our military should be asked about this particular situation. But there are many misfortunes, and of course, any casualty is a great tragedy, and that's why we want to end this conflict as soon as possible.
Well, let me see.
In other words, that's an outright, blatant, and unequivocal lie. So, Dmitriev's visit to the location in question is, without any doubt, a complete and utter failure, a total Kremlin failure, because the person who came and represented the Russian side demonstrated not genuine authority, leadership, or credibility, but only managed to show and highlight the depth and extent of Russian lies, deception, and propaganda as it happened in this particular case. And this is now being confirmed at the highest level. So, Besond, who says that the Russian Federation is already feeling the sanctions and that there will be even more. This is the Minister of Finance, I repeat, while Dmitriev is a lying propagandist who shouldn't be trusted, and it's not even clear why he came here at all. Upon hearing these assessments, the Kremlin immediately launched Plan B. Since we can't just smirk and backtrack somewhere on US territory through Dmitriev's mouth, we'll start threatening with the Burevestniks. The Burevestnik, an intercontinental ballistic missile that was launched somewhere, Putin boasts about it, meets with the general staff and talks about how it successfully flew 14,000 kilometers and that it's a huge threat. So this is the kind of nerves Putin is showing today, and he's sending a signal to the West and the United States that we still have these kinds of arguments left if you don't want to peacefully give us part of the Donbas. Without Ukraine, just don't make us fight on the front line, just give us part of the Donbas. But the second question, which was raised by Dmitry, is about territorial conditions, giving up part of Donbas and not occupied Kherson and Zaporizhzhia. Unexpected, friends, unexpected. So Burevestnik is one thing, but now this kind of story is coming into play as well. After all, Dmitriev is a propagandist there, okay, but he's unofficial. Our official propagandist is Solovyov, who unexpectedly in his latest broadcast started a monologue, a tirade, about how difficult it is to hold on to Zaporizhzhia and Kherson, saying that it's supposedly a huge burden and that there are 1 million people living in Zaporizhzhia itself, and in Kherson there are 500 or 600,000. And all these people need to be fed, given water, provided with jobs, social guarantees, and to rebuild what the Russian army destroyed during its so-called special military operation. Why does the Russian Federation even need this at all? The studio guests wanted to respond with their own remarks, but Solovyov didn't let them. What could this indicate? This is a specific directive from the Kremlin about the necessity to thoroughly prepare the Russian people and public opinion for a great victory for Russia, for a so-called success of the special military operation, but without this very drawn-out story and the heavy burden, primarily economic, of dealing with Zaporizhzhia and Kherson, the cities. And even without Zaporizhzhia and Kherson, the Russian Federation has already won. It's clear what's happening, right? And today, yet another story is unfolding. So Lavrov comes out, and his quote is being circulated saying that the Russian Federation is supposedly ready to support the United States concept regarding peace in Ukraine. And what does the United States concept boil down to? A ceasefire along the front line. And it turns out it's not interpreted that way, not at all. You see? Now, at this particular moment, Lavrov is actually apologizing for Dmitriev, specifically citing or reminding the United States about some rather vague and not entirely clear agreements that were made between Putin and Vitkov, which, as it turns out, were later coordinated and discussed in Anchorage. And this, in particular, specifically refers to a certain part of the Donbas region, which has been the subject of much debate and negotiation. 29 or 28%, forgive me for the inaccuracy right now, of Donbas. This is now the cornerstone and the key issue in this whole story with the meeting at the Putin summit in Budapest. This is what the huge bargaining is about right now. And so that you have no doubts about what Lavrov actually said and how it should be interpreted, I found this entire excerpt on one Telegram channel. Well, let's go ahead. Here is the excerpt for us to consider. This is Lavrov's direct speech. What exactly did he say regarding the concept proposed by the United States?
With the agenda that was carefully brought to Moscow by Stephen Vitkov just a few days before the Alaska summit, we took the time to look at and consider the proposals that Stephen Vitkov presented, and we said that we needed to think about them further. Then, in Alaska, President Putin stated that he was ready and willing to cooperate based on the concept and framework that President Trump had previously brought to Moscow, and which both leaders continued to discuss and elaborate on during their meetings in Alaska. President Putin repeated every element of the concept that was presented and asked Stephen Vitkov, who was present at the discussions in Ankara, whether this was correct or not. Everything was documented. And then President Putin said that we are ready. We are willing to accept your concept, and that is what we truly believe. We can make reasonable changes to specific terms or details based on what you have thoughtfully proposed. After that, however, there was unfortunately no appropriate response. They agreed that it was necessary to take some time to think about it.
That's all. So in fact, this clearly and directly contradicts everything that Dmitriev has said. And I return, as I have previously mentioned, to the beginning of my analysis about this conflict that may exist between Putin's administration and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. If people are saying different things, with, say, a difference of 2 to 3 days, they say different things. Dmitriev spent 5 days in the United States. In his interview today, Lavrov completely undermines all the efforts of that propagandist, according to Besson's words. And here's the insider information today. Dmitriev goes to America, tells all sorts of things there. Clear? From the perspective of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, that's quite a catch. It's very unfortunate that he's doing this. We've gathered some information on him. We'll soon pass it on to Vladimir Vladimirovich. After that, Dmitriev should be put under supervision. At the very least, he should no longer be allowed to leave Russia. I'm saying this directly so that Dmitriev doesn't get any bolder. Diplomacy in his case is unfair. This was stated by a source close to Lavrov. Perhaps it was Ryabkov who said this, who also criticized Dmitriev a bit about 2 weeks ago, talking about the impulse. Remember? The Anchorage impulse and so on. And that's what Ryabkov said, who later also had to keep his mouth shut. And to sum up, Trump responded to all this mess that the Russian Federation is stirring up again. He didn't fall for it and said that meetings with Putin will take place only if there is a full understanding regarding an agreement on Ukraine. Only then will it take place. And the key figure is Vitkov, on whom everything now hinges and depends from the Kremlin's point of view. Vitkov was invited to Kiev by Asibiga today. He said he can come at any time on any day. We are waiting.